Whoa, do flowers have best friends?
I'm sorry. I'm afraid I don't know that.
Hey, follow me. I want to show you something. Look, flowers do have best friends.
Whoa.
Some answers can only be found in nature. Discover the unsearchable. Visit discovertheforest.org to find a trail near you. Brought to you by the United States Forest Service and the Ad Council.
News Radio 690 KTSM El Paso.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. Be a part of the show by calling 915-544-KTSM, 915-544-5876, or comment online on our stream at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. It's 4 p.m. Mountain Time, and that means it's time to talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in, however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on our various social pages, facebook.com/Talk El Paso, the Talk El Paso channel over on YouTube, Twitter at Talk El Paso, or Twitch, Andrew J. Polk. A lot of ways that we are out there, and the entire point, all of it really, promise, is to have a better, deeper, more important conversation about the things that affect us here in the Borderland, as we have Cindy Golden chiming in right now. And a lot of ways people can do that. Again, the comments are one of the better ways throughout the program if you're truly wanting to and join in the conversation that way. I know there's plenty that want to just sit back and absorb it all. That is certainly your prerogative, but we got a lot of stuff we're going to be talking about here today. Of course, kind of the way I like talking about things is about what's going on in the Borderland, the development, the movement, the shaking, all that good stuff here. But, of course, it's taken on a little bit of a different tenor over these last couple of weeks. I was already expecting some upheaval, some different focuses coming out of just the election. But, of course, international events have intervened in a way that, well, I guess hindsight being 2020, it now seems like, you know, the whole in the movie, that one news item that's playing in the background while the main character is having breakfast or something now becomes overwhelmingly important. Yeah, it kind of feels like that. But the local currents still going on. So kind of my thesis statement for today, if you want to put it that way, is how does economic development continue in the Borderland in the midst of, I almost don't want to say unprecedented, but continuously changing and weirding global instability? So that's kind of a thing we're going to be talking about in a whole lot of ways today. A couple of guests here on deck for you today, going to be joined here shortly by Robby Gray, editor of El Paso Inc., talk about some of their reporting going on those exact subjects, and of course, how they are going about keeping everyone informed, all that good stuff as we do. Also, a little bit later in the program, going to be focused on those elections. I made some promises yesterday that I fully intend to follow through on with keeping up with that and still talking about those elections here. If you go over to the Irene Armendariz-Jackson site, this kind of sobering countdown, 244 days, 7 hours, and 51 minutes as of right now to that November election. So we'll be talking with her about her campaign as the GOP nominee for the Texas 16th Congressional District, because election season doesn't quite never end. Well, it does for me anyway, but we'll get into those issues and what's going on there. And that, of course, in light of everything going on here locally, nationally, internationally. I mean, there's just so much to get into with all of this here. So let's talk about one of those, let's call it national visiting regionally. Best way to put it, I think. Of course, we did have President Joe Biden visiting Fort Worth today out there in the area, focusing on one of the points that is still being kept up and is seemingly going into the quote-unquote unity agenda, that focused on veterans issues and most specifically burn pits. But, of course, nothing is exactly going according to plan when it comes to any issue. Seriously, you point me to an issue that is exactly on the same track that it was as of, say, 3 weeks ago, and I'll point to you a plan that you forgot about, basically, is what it comes down to. Because even when it comes to veterans issues, now, of course, quite the sharp focus happening on what might be happening with potential conflicts, as we're even looking at reports coming in today of troops from Texas deployed at bases being deployed into those, well, not extraordinary, but certainly amped up focus on them overseas deployments to NATO partners and such here. No one being put into combat, because that is a line that has not yet been crossed. But of course, Texas, quite the focus happening on it when it comes to its own, well, development of another kind. The whole oil and gas sector has had a focus on it that has been, it's always been background. Anytime you buy anything these days, and during the pandemic, all of it, everything has always been a little bit filtered through, okay, what are the costs it's actually taking to do it? But of course, with gas prices continuing to jump, I purposefully didn't look at any pumps today because I didn't want to make myself that sad, but I'm sure someone will tell me how they are looking in their neck of the woods, because it's probably, well, continuing apace, particularly with today, with us having the news that the United States ending all oil imports from Russia. That, of course, being a gripe, more than a little bit of a gripe, been coming up for a minute when it comes to all the sanctions that are being done or not being done and needing to be done in response to the Russian invasion of Ukraine. And I know we had a lot of weird words come about that yesterday, but let's make no mistake and call this what this is. This is one country invading another because it doesn't like what it's doing and says that it should be in control of it. Plain and simple. That's even the Russians' own damn statements coming out of the Putin administration. So let's not mince words about that and make this very clear that for all of the smoke and mirrors being put up by Vladimir Putin and his quest for whatever his cockamamie scheme is, that is seriously endangering lives around the world and livelihoods at home, even more broadly, that is his goal. I know we got a lot of some trolling comments come in on that, but again, let's just make this perfectly clear. That's what's going on. But if you think that the bottom could just fall out here locally, that can't happen either. We still got plenty that we need to be doing. And if we are looking at, what was I seeing? Specifically, that the apocalyptic gas prices that were being shown during the movie I Am Legend, specifically the remake with Will Smith in it, were now at or maybe even being exceeded by some of the levels being seen in places like California, which I'm sorry, you reap what you've sown if you're still living out in those places. I hope you were living very comfortably before, because it's probably going to get a little bit less. I don't live in California for just a whole lot of reasons, and that just, add it to the top of the pile there. Another straw that already crushed the Camel 50 bale loads about. John Browson with an interesting bit of analysis. World War III, starting just like World War II, Crimea equals Sudetenland. Ukraine equals a portion of Czechoslovakia. The war starts when Red China tries to take over Taiwan. I mean, there's this writ large, the instability I'm talking about. The phrase that is very persuasive to me is that we have entered a decade of great instability, and whether or not that turns into full-scale anything, war, famine, pestilence, decay, all of it, remains to be seen. I think that there is some ability to step away from the edge that is possible, whether those in power and on the wheels of power and at the controls of it will actually do so remains to be seen. But again, focusing on here today with Biden in Fort Worth, focusing on those veterans issues. Of course, a lot of calls coming up from state level and even national, but Texas-based lawmakers about drilling. That discussion we had yesterday about, well, looking at development within the area, those oil and gas leases, the ability to do it, even if there is vague assurances at best, to my mind, from the administration about, yes, we are going to alleviate concerns here at home. To my mind, sounds like it might be a good idea to then look at really ramping up the production. I got called a centrist yesterday because of talking about, well, what reality means and what policies need to get into place. We'll probably get into that a little bit later in the show, because I think if looking at reality and seeing what works makes someone a centrist, we're all really screwed up here. RJ saying we didn't want missiles in Cuba. Russia doesn't want missiles in Ukraine. Simple, but we also didn't, well, we did invade Cuba, but that didn't work out. But we haven't currently invaded Cuba and are not claiming that Cuba has always been a part of us. Like, there are parallels, but this is not exactly an apples to apples kind of situation here. We got a lot more to talk about here, and we already do for that first break. We're going to be talking about this all this show. So, to the point here, going to be joined here next segment by Robby Gray, editor of El Paso Inc., to talk about the local situation, how the economic development we're looking at is, and how all these situations might affect them looking forward. So, stay tuned. More Talk El Paso after this break here on News Radio 690 KTSM.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
I-10 eastbound at East Lake, a crash has blocked the left lane. It's caused a backup back to the 375 interchange. You got a 10-minute delay from Loop 375 out to East Lake. Sean Haggerty Drive, eastbound at Gateway South, an injury accident. Got another crash on Loop 375 southbound at the Montana Avenue exit ramp. And an injury accident, Loop 375 southbound at Bob Hope Drive. Medical team on the scene there. Carrie Edwards, El Paso traffic.
This report is sponsored by Blindster. Do you need new blinds or shades? Blindster.com offers custom-made blinds, shades, and shutters shipped directly to you at prices less than big box retailers. Blindster blinds are easy to install and guaranteed to fit. Don't overpay for new blinds. Shop Blindster today and save big. Blindster.com.
What's done more to improve overall health and wellness? Modern medicine or personal hygiene? Actually, it's both. But considering that bathing went mainstream in the 1800s and brushing your teeth in the 1900s, isn't it time for something new, like cleaning your nose? After all, your nose is the body's air filter for trapping dirt and germs, the first line of defense against allergens, bacteria, and viruses from getting into your lungs. But how do you clean your nose? With Navage. Navage isn't medicine, it's more like plumbing. Navage uses powered suction to pull saline in one nostril to the very back of the nose where germs can get trapped and multiply, and then out the other nostril, flushing out mucus and microbes so you can breathe better, sleep deeper, snore less, and stay healthier. Join over 2 million others and find out for yourself how refreshing and easy to use Navage is. At Navage.com, Walgreens, CVS, Rite Aid, Bed Bath, and Target. Navage. Clean nose, healthy life.
Hey, Mario Courtney Lopez here. We know life's moments are definitely better together.
And Smart Mouth mouthwash gives us the confidence to always be ready to make the most of these moments.
Whether in studio, on the red carpet, or around the house, having the confidence to get close is amazing.
Our lives are better together with Smart Mouth. Just 2 rinses a day means fresh breath for 24 hours.
Find it at your favorite drug, grocery, or supercenter store, or save 20% at smartmouth.com/radio.
Mutual Insurance Company presents.
And Doug.
Check it out, Limu, a roadside carnival.
Step right up, folks. Test your strength. Come see the fire-breathing baby.
Let's fan out and tell people that Liberty Mutual customizes your car insurance so you only pay for what you need.
Look, an emu wearing sunglasses.
Limu, you're famous. Only pay for what you need.
Liberty, 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 liberty.
El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in, however you may be doing so. A lot of ways to interact with the show, even when we're not quite on the phone lines as we are just yet. We got the social media, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch are some of the places. A lot of comments coming in already because, there's just a little bit to talk about all the things going on here. John Brazelton, Julie Patterson, RJ over on the YouTube, Cindy Golden, and more. So if you're wanting to chime in that way, one of the better ways throughout the program, don't have to. If you're along for the ride, you are tuned in here 4 to 6 p.m. as we are. But to talk more about those local situations, again, kind of, we call it back of the napkin, back of the hand kind of thing, thesis statement for the day, economic development in the time of global instability. Joined here by Robby Gray, editor of El Paso Inc., to talk more about their reporting, what they're going on. Robby, thank you for joining us here today in studio.
It's great to be here again, Andrew.
Absolutely, because you'd all do a lot of important reporting. And, of course, congratulations on your El Pasoan of the Year luncheon that was had there. We talked a little bit about that at the end of last year, and though recognizing them here today, including a fan favorite subject there about local movers and shakers and, of course, murals.
Amid all the uncertainty, it was a bright spot. Last week, about 500 people gathered in downtown to honor 2 El Pasoans. The focus was healthcare and art, so we honored Dr. Richard Lang, founding president of Texas Tech University Health Sciences Center El Paso, and Simi Alvarado, an El Paso artist who's making a mark across El Paso and on the national stage.
I mean, I think that cultural enrichment is important in our area, even if there's some disagreement about that. But then, of course, you all also covering the current events going on with elections and such, doing some of the better concerted reporting, in my opinion, when it came to the primary election, and particularly that one, frankly, the most surprising one, even called somewhat statewide, of the Texas, I believe, 74th House district, the one that is now going to be held by Claudia Ordaz-Perez after ousting Art Fierro.
Yes, it was a very unusual situation where you essentially had two state reps facing off against each other for one district, and the results were pretty strong in favor of Claudia Ordaz-Perez, who ousted Art Fierro.
And that one being just the confluence of events happening there. We are looking at the results of redistricting and the fact that elections and representation matter, but then also statewide efforts, I guess would be the best way to put it here, because it wasn't just a local push. There were also essentially a statewide coalition of PACs, might be a good way to put it. It's a little murky, but essentially money being pumped into that race and at least one others. And this was the one that had the most, essentially definitive result for that, with the incumbents being defeated, which is not even just within Texas politics, usually a thing that happens outside of like major scandals. It's an anomaly.
Yeah, that's right. And another focus of this election was the new voting law
as
well. That there were, I think Claudia Ordaz-Perez told us she was a bit concerned about voter turnout and how that would impact the race. And we spoke to El Paso County elections administrator, and she said that they have, they've rejected hundreds of mail-in ballot applications under the new law.
Yeah, and so that one coming down to, there are technicalities. We've had some callers that have mentioned that as well. They're training, they're receiving on it. That's in person. There's a lot of recourses, provisional ballots, but that the very specific provisions within, primarily coming out of SB1 there, were about essentially matching of information, and the things were mismatched. The cure was whatever was in place previously is now pretty much a reject and have to fix it, which then kind of puts essentially the onus on the voter.
When you apply for a mail-in ballot, you have to give either a state identification number or a portion of a social security number, and it's got to match the voter records. So the issue is if you registered to vote decades ago using your state license, and then you apply for your mail-in ballot using the last four of your social security number and it doesn't match, then your ballot gets rejected and they will make an effort to reach out to you. But it did mean that a number of hundreds of ballots got rejected.
Yeah, so if you ended up having one of those be your situation heading into this primary election, now would be the time to get that fixed, because we do have the runoffs coming up in late May, but then also, again, a constitutional amendment election coming up in early May. We have, again, 3 major times on the ballot coming up here, including the one in November. So I'm certainly going to have elections on the mind. So probably going to be a lot of outreach happening with that, with the El Paso County Elections Department going forward from that, I'm sure.
Yeah, there are a number of runoff elections, and mark your calendar for May 24th.
May 24th, it's on my calendar here, including some of the ones that we've discussed here on air. We'll probably be delving further into here. But getting back to the economic development aspect of it here, I have long been encouraged by what has been happening with downtown, when it seemed to, at least me personally, that we moved the corner from just demolishing things and putting in surface level parking lots, which does still unfortunately occur, to actually looking at the use of the property. And with costs increasing, we saw a not quite example of that, but a close near miss what was going on with the Caples building downtown.
Yeah, so the historic Caples building in downtown, it's historic but deeply troubled. It's in terrible condition. Was put up for auction. It was a 3-day online auction, but it turns out that none of the bids met the minimum $2.2 million, so it remains for sale.
And of course, that is part of the portfolio of buildings that were previously owned by the Abrahams, which there are a lot of, let's just say, opinions on their stewardship of downtown building stock. But this one now, of course, outside of that ownership. And so there's potentials here. Some of the ones that you all are reporting on specifically were kind of interesting multi-use possibilities there, both, maybe retail, maybe, some kind of housing, or also secure storage of things. And is it seeming like there's that kind of interest in further utilization of downtown buildings in general?
Yeah, in general, it is definitely picked up, and many of the buildings were owned by William Abraham, and it was a bit of a milestone in downtown when those buildings became available through his bankruptcy. This is one of them that's passed a couple of hands now, It's a very difficult building to do anything with, one, because of its condition, but also the design of some of these old buildings just don't lend themselves to current codes and turning them into offices and such. So one thing we have heard is being considered is some sort of downtown storage.
So that would be interesting. And again, if you want to see the full stories over with them, elpasoinc.com to get into, because he did delve into some of the complexities, some of the interest levels, even if there was a little bit of, given that it was a bidding situation, coyness on the part of it, the people looking to do it here. But a little bit more concretely, something that y'all been talking about recently is there with kind of on the focus of economic development, what I have begun to refer to as just ravenous demand for doing things in town. And the more concrete way that you put that there is through, the alcohol sales that could even be seen just through the end of 2021.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, if anyone's tried to go out to a restaurant and not has a reservation, I mean, I think people are ready to be out. It's light. Spring is here. It's busy. And, every year we do what's called kind of our liquor ticker, and we look at the sales tax paid to the state through the sale of liquor, and rank the establishments that are the most popular. So I can go down the list here.
Yeah, we've talked about them briefly previously, but I think it goes a good idea to look back at it because, among other things, patio bars do seem to be, and outdoor venues in general seem to be doing pretty well.
Yeah, so the top bar was Gringo Theory, an East Side patio bar, and that was followed by Ojos Locos Sports Cantina, a restaurant sports bar and airway, then Top Golf, then the Hotel Paso del Norte, and then Pockets Billiards and Fun.
I mean, it's surprising to me, and some of the numbers there, I mean, pulling down millions of dollars in just that kind of sales as part of it, it is, I mean, it's significant.
So what struck me the most was the total paid to the state in sales tax. So if you look at 2020, local establishments here paid a total of $84.6 million. When we pulled the latest numbers for 2021, it was $200 million, which exceeded even the pre-pandemic levels. I mean, people are getting out.
And again, this is to the end of 2021, which means that the currents that you're seeing, I'm seeing, anyone going out is probably also seeing is at the least current trajectory, given the uncertainty we're still dealing with, possible to eclipse that just from, anecdotal evidence. Because again, packed is an understatement for most. They even try to go out to lunch today. I had a lunch meeting out, and a place that I went to that is usually, decently busy, wall to wall, which mildly surprised me for just off the rush time too. And that seems to be just about everywhere.
Yeah, so there are some things that have owners a bit nervous. One of those trends, of course, we talked about this before, is inflation, which is a big problem, as well as the staffing challenges. So it's not all positive for the industry, but it's definitely a bright spot. The other trend we noticed in the list that was new for many years is a lot of local establishments made the top of the list. And for a long time, it was many of the chains, as well as some of the big players like Top Golf and such that really dominated the top of the list. This time, a lot of local places.
Which I'm always encouraged by, because I think that if anything's going to make it through, it'll be the local places people support. But that's my personal contention anyway. One last aspect of economic development I want to get on here with you is something that y'all been doing, the Crane Watch, and looking at, we've talked about this a bit, some of the investments, some of the redevelopment, some of the sales of businesses in our area. So it's looking at this in a very kind of concrete way of new things literally being built because of, the variety of reasons could come into it, but the assumption being there that they're betting that this is going to work out.
Yeah, things are still being built, and the list is really too long for me to relate here on the radio. It's up on our website at elpasoinc.com. But it's all over the city. Everything from Montecillo, where there's even a Carvana vehicle vending machine that might be opening there. There's apartments. There's the new kind of entertainment area. There's the then if you look at downtown, the El Paso Children's Museum and Science Center set to open. There's industrial buildings. If you've seen that massive one going up off Global Reach on the airport property, that's the company behind TJ Maxx, Marshalls, and Home Goods. That's putting together a huge distribution center. The list is long.
Yeah, and so this goes into another interesting conversation we'll probably be focusing on more here about how the investment in our area and even that whole nearshoring, reshoring, not quite reshoring situation is going to affect us, even as we're looking at, again, situations changing daily here. So again, guest right now, been Robby Gray, editor of El Paso Inc. Thank you for coming in to talk to us about some of the reporting you got going on, what it means for our situations here locally, and what you're all going to be continuing to talk about going forward here today.
Thank you. Always a pleasure.
Absolutely here. All right, so due for that next break right now. I think coming out of that, since we're doing the whole split interviews today, we'll go ahead and open up those phone lines here. So if you're wanting to call in, you had your 2 cents. The number to do so, 915-544-5876, 544 KTSM. Back after this break with more Talk El Paso here on News Radio 690 KTSM.
El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
Hello, I'm Erica Castillo with this KFOX 14 News Update. A Texas man has been convicted of storming the U.S. Capitol last year with a holstered handgun. It is a milestone victory for federal prosecutors and the first trial among hundreds of cases arising from last year's riot. A jury also convicted Guy Wesley Reffitt of obstructing Congress's joint session to certify the Electoral College vote on January 6, 2021, of interfering with police officers who were guarding the Capitol, and of threatening his 2 teenage children if they reported him to law enforcement after the attack. The verdict could be a bellwether for many other Capitol riot cases. It could give Justice Department prosecutors more leverage in plea negotiations and discourage other defendants from gambling on trials of their own. And President Biden is in Fort Worth today. The trip is a chance for the president to talk with veterans and their caregivers and push for more help for members of the military who face health problems after exposure to burn pits, especially in Iraq and Afghanistan. I'm Erica Castillo with this KFOX 14 News Update.
News Radio 690. Traffic all day.
I-10 eastbound at Eastlake, a crash has blocked the left lane. It's caused a backup back to the 375 interchange. You got a 10-minute delay from Loop 375 out to Eastlake. Sean Haggerty Drive, eastbound at Gateway South, an injury accident. Got another crash on Loop 375 southbound at the Montana Avenue exit ramp. And an injury accident, Loop 375 southbound at Bob Hope Drive. Medical team on the scene there. Carrie Edwards, El Paso traffic.
After another cool day across the area, temperatures will gradually warm over the next couple of days with windy conditions as our next storm system approaches from the west. Tonight, expect another cold night with clear skies and temperatures cooling into the upper 20s to lower 30s. Coming up tonight, we'll talk about when those gusty winds return, plus when we could see colder air moving in, along with the chance for a few showers. From the KFOX 14 Severe Weather Center, I'm meteorologist Kira Miner.
This report is sponsored by Indeed.com. If cold candidate calls aren't turning into hot hiring leads, then you need Indeed, because Indeed's powerful hiring platform makes it easy to attract, screen, and interview candidates all from one place. Find your next great hire visiting Indeed.com/credit.
Inventing Anna, the official podcast, delves deeper into the story behind the Netflix series about Anna Sorokin, the fake heiress who stole the hearts and money of New York social elite, featuring conversations with the actual people who played a part in this iconic story, and series creator Shonda Rhimes.
My theory of Anna, which is, it is that thing that Vivian says, I will make you famous. The world will know who you are.
Listen to Inventing Anna, the official podcast on the iHeartRadio app or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hey, you! Ever wanted to learn a language like French or Spanish or even Norwegian, but thought it'd be too difficult or time-consuming? Then try Babbel. Quick 10-minute lessons.
Siesta.
Babbel. Games, podcasts, even live online classes with a real teacher.
Hola, clase.
In no time, chatting about real-life topics will feel, well, effortless. Learn a new language with ease. Go to Babbel.com to try for free. That's Babbel.com.
I love when my friends stop by, but to help keep my friends and my family safe, I always spray Lysol in my home before guests arrive and again after they leave. Nothing kills more viruses on more surfaces than Lysol disinfectant spray. Lysol, what it takes to protect. Use as directed.
Joe Buck and John Smoltz welcoming you back to the City Center Convenience Mart. Uh-oh. She's looking at the cigarettes, but she just grabs the gum off the counter. Stand Up to Cancer and Rally want you to reduce your risk for cancer. Go to takeahealthystand.org.
This report is sponsored by Stand Up to Cancer.
Whiskey is for drinking, and water is for fighting. In 1890s Ysleta, a pitched battle rages over the local water rights. Mayor Ben Alderetti and his men are cleaning out a water canal when IG Gall, who claims to be the legitimate mayor of Yesetta, arrives with his men and runs Alderetti and his workers off at gunpoint. Later, Alderetti returns to the canal with a warrant in hand, and the firefight begins. When the marshal finally arrives and restores order, one man is dead and several are wounded. The locals were heard to say of the gunfight that fortunately, more horses died than people that day on the canal.
The El Paso History Show with Jackson Polk and Melissa Sargent is sponsored by Patrick Tuttle Coldwell Banker Heritage Real Estate, Pepe's New Mexican Restaurant in Canutillo, Mission Del Rey Southwest, Keystone Heritage Park, and Monterey Asset Management. It's the El Paso History Show, Saturday morning at 10, streaming live on Facebook and on News Radio 690.
News on the hour and a half. Traffic and weather all day. Keeping you informed and up to date. El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM. News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in however you may be doing so. A lot of ways to interact with the show. And so we're doing that whole split interview today. Thanks again to Robby Gray, editor of El Paso Inc., for the last segment there. And coming up in next hour, we will be talking with Irene Armendariz-Jackson, candidate for or nominee, rather, on the GOP side of things, for the Texas 16th Congressional District, going to be taking on Congresswoman Veronica Escobar, a Democrat, in the November election. That's coming up. In the meantime, since we're doing that whole split interview thing, we do have those phone lines open. If you wanted to add your 2 cents, that number to call, 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM. A lot of stuff to talk about here today. Again, how we're going to navigate in our local area through all of these currents is pretty well overriding in my mind in terms of importance and the time we'll devote to it here. A lot of comments coming in here, RJ, over on the YouTube saying, when our disposable income winds up in the gas tank, and Sam's Wally World till things are going to change here, we will indeed see. Calvin Williams with a question asking, just after Robbie left, just curious, in the state of Texas, who pays more per employee, big box stores or mom and pop stores? Interesting question. I guess it depends on what industry you're looking at, because I don't know. I'll kind of put that question to Robbie on his way out the door there, did see it, and it was more along the lines that there's probably a bigger representation of, well, mom and pop, that size, small business in general within El Paso in terms of just total amount of employees. But, interesting conversation to be had, absolutely. And otherwise, some comments and qualifications going on about different representatives here and the people we're going to be interviewing, and we'll be talking with them here in just a bit. But Michael Pata is saying that the Saudi Crown Prince and the UAE Sheikh both declined U.S. requests to talk to Biden here. Of course, energy supplies coming into sharp focus with all of this, and amidst the visit of the president to Fort Worth, a little bit, or ongoing right now as far as I'm aware, the plan for how to do that, and frankly, the calls coming out of Texas lawmakers of all stripes is becoming, well, let's just say a little bit more concrete. Specifically, we are looking at, lawmakers here in Texas, both at the state level and those, of course, federal representatives, saying that, just some of the tweets here. Let me see if I can pull these up here while the president was over in Fort Worth, saying things like, want to say it was actually Governor Greg Abbott saying, let's Midland over Moscow, and retweeting yes, let's buy American products starting with Permian Basin oil and gas, and saying specifically in his Twitter post, instead of begging other countries for oil, Biden can stop hindering the U.S. energy sector. Texas can easily produce enough oil to reduce gas prices if the administration would get out of the way. Don't make us dependent on foreign sources of energy. So that probably going to be, well, quite a lot of the refrain already happening there. Kathy Kodry pointing out, as has been brought up before, that there are over 4,000 products made from petroleum. Everything associated with petroleum products will skyrocket soon. Yeah, probably. It's going to be a tricky time. And again, the way that then works out for continuing up the demand that we're seeing in our area is an interesting question to me, but I have mentioned that we do have those phone lines open here. So if you're wanting to call in, the number to do so there is 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM. Do have a call on the line here right now. You're live with Talk El Paso. Who's this?
Your mother?
All righty. Guess that's the kind of thing that can happen there. If you think you're going to get a funny word through us on the phone there, just know that that's not how it works. But hey, if you're wanting to call in, 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM. We have ways of dealing with Baba Booey out there. But you want to make a fool of yourself? Who am I to stand in the way of your just great intellectual endeavor? Yep. Anyway, we'll see you talking about the things that are important here. So, okay, oil and gas exploration. I do think it's important to focus also on, well, another example of this. We brought up yesterday the difference of what's been going on, or maybe not necessarily the difference, but the way that it's being handled in New Mexico when it comes to, well, their offshoots of the oil and gas industry, or specifically the revenues they're being seen coming from it, and how they are then dealing with, well, teachers and teacher shortages. And if you want to go over actually to our website right now, ktsmradio.com, Governor Greg Abbott is now calling for a task force into teacher shortages. Of course, this does come at the same point in time when New Mexico, in light of its, even in our local area, local listening area, even up in New Mexico and Las Cruces, having to have had National Guard certified teachers come in and take the place due to, I mean, there were a lot of people that just flat out retired, didn't come back, or decided that they're not doing this anymore. And that is causing concerns, even as Texas, those constitutional amendment elections that I mentioned coming up here, going to be dealing directly with funding for education and how it's structured these days. Oh, geez, a lot of interesting comments coming over here, all over on the social media on this subject here. We'll get into more of those here in just a second. But in the letter, according to our article, if you want to go and see it for yourself, letter to the Texas Education Agency, Governor Greg Abbott has asked that the task force investigate what is causing teachers to leave the classroom and make recommendations on policies that could improve recruitment and retention. Among other things, does make me think that New Mexico has, well, we'll see how it works out for them, in that they're increasing by at least like high 4 figures, low 5 figures, more or less across the board for most levels and classifications of teacher salary, looking at just upping it. Now, this is not something that I think can be solved overnight, but this is a specific avenue that they are using in order to get that funding through, is from the oil and gas industry. Now, whether Texas is going to be willing to do that, it starts feeling a little bit like a strangling the golden goose if you get a little bit too hands-on to it, doesn't it here? Because I am sure that there's a lot of money that could be made out of oil and gas exploration, but given the, well, ravenous appetite that is probably going to be getting worked on here by these currents, all of this, the energy demand here, I've heard at least a couple of people saying that, well, spring break is canceled because we can no longer afford the gas prices that we're going to be anticipating to be paying going forward through it. So that's just some of the considerations going on here. And, oh, geez. You know, we're going to go and take that break right now. We got some interesting arguments we got to get over to in the comments about representation and what it means to it. Plus, we got those phone lines open right now. If you're wanting to call in, again, the number to do so there, 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM. Back after this break with more Talk El Paso here on News Radio 690 KTSM.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
We got 3 crashes on Loop 375 southbound right now, starting from north going south. One at 375 southbound at Montana Avenue exit ramp. One Loop 375 southbound at Vista del Sol, which is causing a backup to Montwood. Another injury accident at Bob Hope. That earlier crash on the 10 eastbound at East Lake, it's caused a 10-minute backup from East Lake back to Loop 375. Another crash reported I-10 eastbound at Mesa Street. Carrie Edwards, El Paso traffic.
This report is sponsored by Indeed.com. Hiring heating up? Indeed's hiring platform makes it easy to attract, screen, and interview candidates all in one place. Sponsor a post and instantly receive a short list of quality candidates on Indeed whose resumes match your job description. Visit Indeed.com/credit.
Who can you trust in big media?
A recent study finds Americans don't trust big media, and 65% of Republicans don't trust them at all. Now, Newsmax has become a trusted source for millions. They go to Newsmax.com for breaking news and watch Newsmax TV for the latest from Washington, New York, Hollywood, and the world. Download the free Newsmax app on your smartphone and watch it anytime, anywhere. Nielsen recently reported that almost 7 million cable viewers watch Newsmax, but not Fox News. Americans really are making the switch to Newsmax. Start every day with Wake Up America and Rob Finnerty. And watch the Newsmax team at night with Eric Bowling, Sean Spicer and Lindsey Keith, Greg Kelly, Stinchfield, Jen Pellegrino, Rob Schmidt, and more. Every weekend, tune in for Huckabee, Diamond and Silk, Dick Morris, Wendy Bell, and more. Already 20 million made the switch and watch Newsmax all the time. Try it. You may never go back.
Are you covered by Medicare and Medicaid? Well, El Paso Health Plus is the plan for you. As a local Medicare Advantage plan, we can offer our members more. Call us at 833-742-3125 or EPHmedicare.com. El Paso Health Plus.
I'm Larry Gelwicks, the getaway guru and host of The Travel Show, and I want to give you a free cruise, courtesy of Morris Columbus Travel, Royal Caribbean Cruise Line, and News Radio KTSM AM 690. There's nothing to buy, but you must enter the drawing online no later than March 15th at TravelShowPrize.com. That's TravelShowPrize.com. And join me on The Travel Show every Sunday at 7 p.m.
Join Brian Birds of the Brian Birds Home Selling Team every Sunday morning at 7:30 a.m. for real estate tips with Brian, the best in El Paso when it comes to selling. Brian is an expert in real estate. Listen every Sunday from 7:30 a.m. to 8 a.m. on KTSM AM 690 for tips on buying or selling your home, info on what's going on in the market today, and much, much more. Real estate tips with Brian every Sunday morning at 7:30 on KTSM AM 690.
NexGard of Fox Alana is monthly flea and tick protection that's #1 vet recommended and #1 dog preferred. Use with caution in dogs with a history of seizures or neurologic disorders. Ask your vet or visit nexguardfordogs.com to learn more.
News Radio 690 KTSM El Paso.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in, however you may be doing. So a lot of ways to interact with the show. If you're wanting to have, discussion about the things that affect us here locally, just that kind of important thing that doesn't happen enough. Anyway, a lot of topics on the mind here today. Again, thesis statement kind of for the day about economic development in the time of just massive global uncertainty. What does it mean here? What are the currents we're looking at right now? Because there's a lot. You can just step outside. Seriously, go down to whatever your main drag is nearby where you are and see how busy places are. There's certainly a demand, whether or not that can be kept up, kept going, kept to the point where we continue through this, at the very least locally. All bets are off the wider scope you look at. I remain bullish, maybe foolishly so, but hey, that's maybe just me sometimes. The one thing I'm not pessimistic about is our local chances here, even as we're looking at just weird situations. So again, thank you to Robby Gray from a little bit earlier in the show, talking to us about their reporting with El Paso Inc. as the editor over there, about what they got going on, the factors they're looking at. Crane Watch is a good thing, I think. But again, continuing it is important there. Got a call that did come in over the break there. A question coming in. Again, if you want to do it yourself yet that way, the number to call 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM. David was asking, a question to politicians in D.C. primarily, why do they think that they're saving the environment if they're just using someone else's gas? And it is kind of the dichotomy or the not making senseness that comes with the whole push for renewables and all that. And then you see it's going to stick with me forever. I should probably get a poster of it, of the Tesla, not to pick on Tesla, but the most prevalent electric car manufacturer out there, of the Tesla dragging a generator behind it that is then plugged into the Tesla itself, essentially reverse engineering it as a gas vehicle. That's why I think that hybrids had kind of been the move here for a few years because, okay, just straight conceptually, just complete, can just be hand-waved, done, and in effect entirely, an all-electric distribution system for then electric vehicles would make a level of sense. Again, if the exempting issues here, we're talking ideally, because then you're no longer transporting fuel to then put in the fuel to then move the fuel around for the fuel for the cars, that kind of thing. So, I mean, a centralized distribution system would make a kind of sense if it could be perfectly and seamlessly implemented in dealing with the, going to be, don't even know what they are yet, but the issues, the stopgaps that are going to be required to get into place. It would make more sense. We ain't there yet, is the short and simple answer that comes along with it. So, sure, I know that the Green New Deal specifically is, quite the big bugaboo when it comes to all of this and the concept of how putting that in place and the issues that would come with it. And that, yeah, there would absolutely be issues that come with it, even those that purport it to me and say, I'm in favor of it. They say, yeah, but it's going to take some work to get there and some patience, and whether or not there's actually the political will to be that patient and deal with it is a massive question even before this current moment here. So the question had come up, and Catherine Codry pointing out that, yes, electric vehicles can cost as much as a home, particularly if you're buying the super expensive ones. I mean, you really saw it, frankly, during the Super Bowl, all of the commercials that came out with all of the major manufacturers looking now at, okay, we're going to be doing, putting the money into it here. Looping out of saying I learned a new phrase, cost prohibitive. Yeah, of course. That's not something we talked about anyway. Interesting comments coming in about our guest coming up a little bit later this hour as well. Again, the comments are always their own right if you want to find them over there on the social media, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch. But yeah, I mean, the infrastructure that it would take to move, I'm not even talking about cost prohibitive nature out there. I am sure that someone's going to come out with a $20,000 electric vehicle. Whether it's good or not is the question, but that there will be something on the market without any of these, again, instability. Idealized situation, stick with me here, that there will be something on the market that will be considered mass market affordable at some level or not. Now, not everyone's going to be driving a Tesla Model 3 Plaid, whatever it is. I have no interest in Tesla. I'm sorry if I'm offending any Tesla fanboys out there, but this ain't it. I think someone will figure out a way to do it, just because I believe that, the free market system, someone will find the incentive to make it work in some way or another. Just like eventually, probably the recycling issues will get solved, only because the cost impetus, if this trajectory continues on, will probably force someone to try to figure out a way to do it, whether it's good or not. Again, another question, but again, let's consider it idealized at the moment. That'll eventually get there. The simple fact of the matter is that our system, think about how energy is distributed for vehicular transportation right now. We have this massive interconnected system of fuel trunk systems, pipes, stations. All of that would have to be replaced. It's been happening kind of really slowly. They've already cropped up some here in El Paso, some actual Tesla charging stations, others, and the local utilities looking at incentivizing it, making it more towards that. But even just from the infrastructure and utility standpoint, the amount of work it's going to take to put that into effect and not make it so that you're not seeing rolling brownouts and blackouts from people trying to charge up their cars overnight is pretty significant. That cannot happen overnight. So whether or not, whole hindsight should have been doing this 20 years ago or anything like that, if the technology had even been there, is debatable. But looking at it from our current standpoint, what is needing to be done to keep this going right now? Because sure, we could say, all gas vehicles are illegal and everyone has to be, doing electric overnight here and you could get thrown in jail otherwise. Sure, let's say that happens. Let's say that someone is just monumentally stupid enough to do that. You would see the bottom fall out of this economy. Just plain and simple. I don't think there's anyone who could even reasonably assume that. Best example I can actually think of is that there was not even on the renewable energy side of things, but Mexico City. They tried in decades past to essentially try to reduce the pollution because in the whole caldera and everything therein can be real smoggy soup. So what they were doing is saying, okay, on certain days, only cars that end in even can drive. And then the next week, on the other days, the cars that end in odd can drive. That kind of a system. So what did you end up seeing? You end up seeing people either somewhat carpooling or just buying another damn car. So it effectively impacted those who had less resources and didn't really do that much to the people who had plenty of resources as it is. An unequal application of these concepts here. And sure, they've made some progress in other ways beyond that, but that's the kind of thing that sticks in my mind whenever you're talking about, hey, we have these ideals that we want to put in place and we think will make the world a better place. How do we get there? The implementation cannot be ignored. If you're just going to say, oh, no, at all costs, we got to do this, well, my first assumption is you're probably not going to be the one bearing that cost if that's truly what you're, well, advocating for. So again, to David's question, why do you think they're saving the environment if we're just using someone else's oil? I think that they're, well, I'm not going to put too much into what I think their motivations are because that gets real slippery real quickly, but I think it's ideals over reality because we've seen a lot of that, and we are in some serious rubber hit the road kind of times. Have been building on that way for a while now, but I think if we're not looking at what it actually means in implementation, which is the way I tend to think about things and policies and what I look at, and what we will be talking about a little bit later in this upcoming hour with Irene Armendariz-Jackson about her policies, just as a hint that we got that interview coming up, we're going to be worse off. So that's why I think, and we will keep talking about the issues the way that we do. Got some questions and some pictures being asked about. We can't really put up pictures within the Facebook stream there, but maybe we'll get to them in future shows here. In any case, we are due for that next hour of the break here right now. So we will take another phone call or two if you want to do it coming out of this break after the top of the hour news, but otherwise we will have that interview coming up here. So stay tuned. More Talk El Paso coming up after this break. You're on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Don't go anywhere. That number to call, 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM. Back in a minute.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
That crash that closed the left lane on the I-10 eastbound after Eastlake. All lanes are now back open as of 2 minutes ago, but the backup is all the way back to Zaragoza with a 40-minute delay on the I-10 eastbound. Watch for a crash reported I-10 eastbound at Mesa Street and 3 crashes on Loop 375 southbound, including the crash at Vista del Sol in 375. Delays back to Montwood. Kerry Edwards, El Paso traffic.
iHeartRadio Earth knows small changes can make a big difference. Want to reduce your food waste? Embrace your freezer. From bread to meat and even cheese, most foods can be frozen and cooked later. Plus, a full freezer uses less electricity. Brought to you by iHeartRadio Earth and the National Environmental Education Foundation. To find more tips for smarter, sustainable living or to take action in your own community, go to iHeartRadio.com/Earth.
Do you promise to love, honor, and cherish, forsaking all others?
I do.
I do.
And now, by the power vested in me, I now pronounce you roommates. Go forth.
That's not the vow you took. But if struggles with CPAP have you and your spouse sleeping in separate rooms, it might be time to look into Inspire. Inspire works inside the body with just the click of a remote. That's right, just a button. No mask, no hose, just sleep. Inspire. Sleep apnea innovation.
Talk to your doctor to see if Inspire is right for you. Review important safety information at inspiresleep.com.
At St. Jude Children's Research Hospital, we're fighting against childhood cancer every day. At the heart of this battle are our donors.
Most of us want to make some type of difference in the lives of others. St. Jude does miraculous work.
The fact that no one has to pay, it's a place where everyone is treated as an equal.
Everybody is welcome here, and it doesn't matter your religion or what part of the world you're from. All that is taken away. It just gives you some hope.
It's just a nice feeling to put your energy into something that really does genuinely make a difference in a child's life.
There's just no greater gift. If we have the ability to help, then we have a responsibility to help.
Finding cures, saving children. St. Jude Children's Research Hospital. Find out how you can help at stjude.org.
Not on my watch, our military service members say, as they volunteer to serve. As they move out, stand firm, and take fire. So not on our watch, we say, to the severely ill or injured veterans who can't get the care they deserve to live full and independent lives, even when there's no government funding or a nursing home seems like the only option. We won't leave one warrior behind. Not on our watch.
News on the hour
Join us
and the
at
half.
FindWWP.org.
Traffic and weather all day. News Radio 690 is KTSM AM El Paso, an iHeart radio station.
NBC News Radio, I'm Brian Shook. The president of Ukraine is urging other world leaders to follow the Biden administration's lead. President Zelensky's comments came after the U.S. banned oil, gas, and coal imports from Russia. And now the European Union says Russian gas imports will be cut by 2/3 by the end of the year. This after it faced mounting criticism for relying too much on Russia for its energy. EU leaders are expected to debate the issue and impose further sanctions on Russia at a Thursday summit in France. Senate GOP leader Mitch McConnell says if he were majority leader, aid for Ukraine would be faster.
If I were the majority leader, we'd be on the Ukraine supplemental right now. It's been challenging to get our Democratic colleagues to do what I believe the Ukrainians need at this particular point.
The Senate will soon pass a sweeping government spending bill that includes more than $12 billion in emergency aid. President Biden wants the U.S. to do more for veteran health care. He told an audience in North Texas how important it was for those who served to get the care they needed. The president says his administration has been doing a lot to make sure veterans go to the VA because it's the country's sacred duty to take care of them. Small business owners reporting inflation as their biggest problem is at the highest level since 1981.
26% of owners said inflation was their most important issue in operating their business. That number is a 4-point increase from December. Other problems small businesses cited were supply chain disruptions and labor shortages. I'm Lisa Taylor.
The Florida Senate is approving the Parental Rights in Education bill. The legislation was labeled by critics as the Don't Say Gay bill. It would prevent teachers from discussing LGBTQ issues in grades K through 3 or in a manner that's not age or developmentally appropriate. You're listening to the latest from NBC News Radio. The World Health Organization is recommending COVID-19 boosters in a reversal to a previous recommendation. The WHO said it strongly supports urgent and broad access to current COVID-19 vaccines for primary series and booster doses. The organization previously spoke out against administering booster shots, saying wealthier countries should hold off so low and middle income countries can vaccinate their populations. Today is the 111th International Women's Day in countries around the world.
In a year when gender bias is the theme, these New York women say,
what's more gender bias than telling people they can't have an abortion?
We are going back 50 years.
Recent rollbacks of abortion rights in states like Texas and Florida are on their minds. And this woman says there's an effort to promote equality in her workplace, but it still falls short.
There's imbalance, maybe pay gap.
Whether they work or not, women say they're responsible for most household chores. Sarah Lee Kessler, New York.
A pilot program in the works would make it possible for electric cars to power an entire home. Dina Kodiak has the details.
It's a partnership between General Motors and Pacific Gas and Electric Company. The two companies are working to make electric GM vehicles capable of powering a home in case of a power outage or grid failure. They're working to scale up the pilot program by the end of this year. Until then, GM CEO says only select PG&E utility customers in California will take part in the summer pilot program. I'm Dina Kodiak.
Greg Popovich could become the sole owner of most NBA regular season coaching wins tomorrow. The San Antonio Spurs head coach tied Don Nelson's record last night when San Antonio beat the Los Angeles Lakers. The victory was Popovich's 1,335th regular season win. All of Pop's wins are with the Spurs, while Nelson coached 5 teams. Brian Shook, NBC News Radio.
This report is sponsored by Lowe's. Sign up for Lowe's MVP's Pros Awards and Partnership Program and get exclusive rewards to help level up your business. Program subject to terms and conditions, valid through 12/31/22. See Lowe's.com/L/Pro Loyalty terms, subject to change.
Hey, Mario Courtney Lopez here. We know life's moments are definitely better together.
And Smart Mouth mouthwash gives us the confidence to always be ready to make the most of these moments.
Whether in studio, on the red carpet, or around the house, having the confidence to get close is amazing.
Our lives are better together with Smart Mouth. Just 2 rinses a day means fresh breath for 24 hours.
Find it at your favorite drug, grocery, or supercenter store, or save 20% at smartmouth.com/radio.
Join iHeartRadio all month as we celebrate the passion, power, and immeasurable impact women have made in the world. It's Women's History Month. Enjoy great stations powered exclusively by females, like Women's History Month Radio, playlists like Women of R&B and Women Who Rock, and personally curated playlists by some of the most influential women in music, like Shania Twain and Madonna, plus tons of featured podcasts like The History Chicks, Red Table Talk, and Stuff Mom Never Told You. Let iHeartRadio be your Women's History Month one-stop audio destination.
A ranger station.
I'd like to report a bear hug.
Okay.
I put out my campfire and Smokey Bear hugged me.
So you drowned the fire, you stirred it, drowned it again, and felt that it was cold?
Uh-huh.
Yep, he's just letting you know you did good.
Bear hug from Smokey Bear. Status update.
I'm gonna let you go now. There are many ways to start a fire, but one sure way to put it out. Learn how you can do your part at SmokeyBear.com.
Sponsored by the U.S. Forest Service, Ad Council, and your state forester.
If you see something, why do you say something?
I see safe for my friends.
For my community.
For everyone here. We all have something worth protecting, a why that unifies us. Report suspicious activity to local authorities. If you see something, say something.
El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in, however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social pages we're up on these days, with a lot of conversation going on about all the issues we deal with. Still more or less a focus of what it means here in the Borderland, but there's so much to be drawn down here. Again, thank you to our guests from the previous hour, Robby Gray, editor of El Paso Inc., helping break down some of that. And also, again, coming up this hour, going to be talking with the Texas 16th Congressional District GOP nominee, Irene Armendariz-Jackson, about her candidacy now that we're past that part. She's the nominee. We have the Democrat nominee, Congresswoman Veronica Escobar, who she will now be challenging on that November ballot. So we'll be getting into those issues and her stance on them and how that relates to the very changing world we're in. We'll squeeze in a phone call or two ahead of that. Not going to take any calls during the interview because we're not really set up to do that. But if you wanted to call in, the number to do so, 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM. Did have an important question come in that way over the break here. Ed asking us a question about what can actually be done with voting in the runoff. Because there were some people wondering, okay, I wasn't registered to vote, didn't know how, didn't have my head out of my keister enough. My word's not there, but I have certain strongly held opinions when it comes to actually voting or not that people may be familiar with. If you did not vote in the primary, currently, my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, is you can vote in the runoff as long as you make sure to register to vote 30 days out. That is the Texas rule, that you have to be registered 30 days out. So there are some states out there that have, same-day voter. That is definitely not Texas. So get that out of your head. But more specifically, can you then vote in a different primary? And that is then a strict no. So if you voted Republican, you have to then vote in the Republican primary runoff. Same as Democrat. Voted Democrat primary, have to vote in the Democrat primary runoff. That is very much within the Texas election code. So no switching primaries. That's one of those little boxes that you may not remember that you checked if you actually went out and voted, is that you do signify your party allegiance and certify that you will not vote in a different party's primary. Well, this year, anyway. You can make your own decisions after that, because you don't have to have actually card carrying to enter into that. You just make that declaration. So if there's any confusion about that, more than welcome to call the El Paso County Elections Department, which they can hopefully answer some of your questions here. I'm sure that they are decently busy. I mean, we still got technically canvassing going on for this one here, but if you want to know anything else, epcountyvotes.com is one of your better ways to find it here. But like I said, we'll squeeze in another call or two. We do have a David on the line with us here right now. David, thanks for joining us.
Howdy.
Hey there, what's on your mind?
I have another question besides swapping Russian oil for American oil.
Mm-hmm.
If you go for electric cars, how do you think you're going to charge them?
I mean,
they use fossil fuels. The only other source would be uranium, and that has problems too. And all of the electric automobiles use rare earth minerals, tellurium, and stuff like that. Unfortunately, most of that stuff comes from, guess where? China and Russia.
Mm-hmm. It's one of the historic reasons for the
We
interest in
need
that
to become
Kamchatka
We
Peninsula.
need to
Yeah.
become energy efficient real quick and energy producing.
I mean, yeah, that's going to be an impetus. I mean, it already kind of has been. I mean, we reached, if you remember, several years ago, the point of efficiency levels with solar panels that they could be seen as getting even lower than fossil fuels, and that was good. But again, the infrastructure that you're talking about that comes along there with it is just not there yet. Because, I mean, heck, you see the power plant over there down by the river with the big metaphor power sign on it, of course. That is going to be driven by fossil fuels. There are some shares, to my understanding, within local power generation of some of the existing nuclear power plants. But, well, you want to talk about things coming out of Ukraine specifically. And sure, shelling is not a usual concern I have for domestic energy supplies, but, well, it's certainly on the menu here at the moment internationally. So I would love actually see, when you talk about green energy, I often do think about nuclear, but the NIMBY problems, not in my backyard, are almost insurmountable. But we're not ready to have that conversation yet. I'll fully agree with you there, because there's so many people that have, again, the ideology wrapped up in it, and the lack of reality is more than a little bit disconcerting for me as we continue having this conversation here. A lot of comments coming in on this. Calvin Williams, so I hope I answer your question there. If you did not vote in the primary, you can vote in the runoff, is my understanding here. So, David, thank you for the point in the call there. Do appreciate it. Try to squeeze in one more here if you wanted to do so. 915-544-5876, 544 KTSM. You're live with Talk El Paso. Who's this?
Yes, Andrew. Harry the Horse here.
Hey there, Harry. What's on your mind?
I want to support my statement that I had made yesterday, where the least of our problems is going to be oil. A year ago, had you had 100 shares of stock in Chevron, Exxon, ConocoPhillips, Phillips 66, and Pioneer, I was doing the math, you'd have made $50,000, okay, in the stock market. Now, I'm sure that there was a lot of people that, don't do that sort of thing. I follow it, but I was afraid myself to pull the trigger because there was so much negativity going on. But that's an indication that oil in this country is on its way back, and they're not going to be able to stop it. I have my daughter works for ExxonMobil and works in the financial. And the last quarter, it's been a long time since an oil company, and I use ExxonMobil, that made $40 billion for the quarter. And when those folks are making that kind of money, they're fixing to crank up again. And that Permian Basin, I've had friends that have worked over there, Andrew, and that is one of the best paying jobs in the world over there in the oil fields. We've had people from El Paso going over there to work to gain some of that filthy lucre.
I mean, when you're offering entry-level six-figure starting positions, as it has been at various points in time over the years, and I'm sure that we are probably going to be, depending on the policies and how the administration deals with it, yada, yada, I feel like we're probably on a track back towards that. Going to be a lot of interest. I mean, literally, there's been negative housing available in some of those areas because of the sheer demand of people moving in there to do those jobs. It's been nuts, and it seems like we're headed back towards it.
Well, I can tell you that regardless, there's a lot of controversy, Andrew, but we're going to need oil for the next 100 years. There's no question about it. They can come out with all the electric and all the pizzazz that they want to. Jeff Bezos, those guys are going into space, but Elon Musk, they can go into space and try to sell their cars. I don't think that's going to go over, honestly. And I've been around a long time. I've been driving since 1948. And when gasoline was 25 cents a gallon, you could go to Blue Sunoco and fill up your car. It's kind of embarrassing, particularly for the folks that work for a living. I feel for those folks that have to pay these lousy high prices because of the government regulations and their foolishness. But anyway, that's my comment for today.
I don't know. I think it's an important one there because, I mean, that's the question about local economic development, how we're going to keep it going in the midst of these uncertainties, because, I mean, we've already, of course, been dealing with supply chain issues, demand issues, workforce issues, and the ability to just have stuff in place. And now this is going to just amp everything up to 11 in my mind, and yeah, it could be maybe even beyond, and it's going to keep changing. So us navigating it locally, I think, is a very important question. So thank you for the point in the call. We're going to have to take that next break right now, and coming out of the next break, going to be having a conversation with one of those persons hoping to have an influence on how all this is set and the policies going into it. Again, Irene Armendariz-Jackson, GOP nominee for the Texas 16 Congressional District, coming up after this break. Stay tuned.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
That crash on the I-10 eastbound past Eastlake is cleared. All lanes are open. That doesn't do any good when you're sitting in that 40-minute delay on the I-10 eastbound from Zaragoza all the way out to Eastlake. That's what it is, 40 minutes. Got an accident reported I-10 eastbound at Mesa Street. Loop 375 southbound at Vista del Sol. An accident blocking the left lane and causing a backup. And on the 54 Gateway southbound at Montana, lots of congestion. Expect delays there. Carrie Edwards, El Paso traffic.
This report is sponsored by Indeed.com. Hiring heating up? Indeed's hiring platform makes it easy to attract, screen, and interview candidates all in one place. Sponsor a post and instantly receive a short list of quality candidates on Indeed, whose resumes match your job description. Visit Indeed.com/credit.
What's done more to improve overall health and wellness? Modern medicine or personal hygiene? Actually, it's both. But considering that bathing went mainstream in the 1800s and brushing your teeth in the 1900s, isn't it time for something new, like cleaning your nose? After all, your nose is the body's air filter for trapping dirt and germs, the first line of defense against allergens, bacteria, and viruses from getting into your lungs. But how do you clean your nose? With Navage. Navage isn't medicine, it's more like plumbing. Navage uses powered suction to pull saline in one nostril to the very back of the nose where germs can get trapped and multiply, and then out the other nostril, flushing out mucus and microbes so you can breathe better, sleep deeper, snore less, and stay healthier. Join over 2 million others and find out for yourself how refreshing and easy to use Navage is. At Navage.com, Walgreens, CVS, Rite Aid, Bed Bath, and Target. Navage. Clean nose, healthy life.
Diabetes, high blood pressure, anxiety meds, everyone's on them. If you're a 50-year-old male, maybe a bit porky, and you may even have type 2 diabetes, $1 million of term insurance may only cost you about $200 a month. Call Term Provider. Speak with Big Lou at 800-230-2777. Big Lou will find a term life policy for you even if you have type 2 diabetes, are overweight, or have high blood pressure. Term Provider has helped thousands of people like you who think they can't afford term life insurance. To buy $1 million of affordable term life for you, all you need to do is call Big Lou at 800-230-2777. Lou will make sure the scales are tipped in your favor. Call 800-230-2777. Big Lou will answer your call and work to fit you into a term life policy that you can afford. Remember, Big Lou's like you. He's on meds, too. Call 800-230-2777. 800-230-2777.
Always just minutes away from the latest news around town and around the world.
You need to know what's going on.
News Radio 690 KTSM. News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in, however you may be doing so. A lot of ways to interact with the show. Don't have those phone lines open right now, but will again shortly. A lot of comments coming in here as we're talking about a lot of issues affecting us here in the Borderland. We got Lorenzo Colon, Calvin Williams, Andrew Ziggernauts, James Ratcliffe, and more. If you want to comment over there, you can go to the better ways to do so throughout our program. It's over on the social media, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch. But turning now to our second interview of the day, really jam-packing them in here today. We are joined now here in studio by Irene Armendariz-Jackson, GOP nominee for the Texas 16th Congressional District. Thank you very much for joining us today.
It's always an honor.
Absolutely, because we, of course, had the primary elections go through, and we didn't focus as much on this race because you did not have a primary opponent here. So you are now officially the nominee when it comes to going into the November election.
Exactly. I mean, from the beginning, from the last election, on election night, we announced that we were going to continue because we gained a lot of ground and we did not want to let that go. And we know that El Paso is Republican. It is conservative. We just ran out of time to be able to have those conversations with people one-on-one and just talk about the values.
And that was an interesting point made during some of the last-minute campaigning in our area, actually leading up to this primary, of course, with Governor Greg Abbott coming through. And some of the more specific local things he was talking about was turning El Paso County red. So that's obviously a sentiment that you're hoping to continue.
Of course. And we're 100% behind Governor Abbott. He is good for the party. He's good for America. He's good for the middle class. And that's the small businesses. And as a mother and a grandmother and a wife, I want to make sure that people understand that he upholds the values of not just the Hispanic community, but the American public.
So since it's been a couple of years since we've really delved into this race and your candidacy here, for those who aren't familiar, what do you describe as your background and qualifications for office?
Well, first of all, I have understood what El Paso lacks, actually, and what I want to bring into El Paso, which are better paying jobs. We need to make sure that the people of El Paso have the opportunity to progress. And in El Paso, with 60 years of Democrat control, we've been left with high taxes and very low opportunities to progress unless you're a Democrat politician, then you're going to progress. But we want to make sure that if we're going to talk about equality, that the equality comes in opportunity, and those that actually want to progress are able to do so here in our beautiful Borderland.
So getting into that a little bit here on your site, IreneArmendariz-Jackson.com, you have under your major issues, economy, jobs, and opportunity wrapped up together. And specifically, it's time to get El Paso to the front line for jobs with the USMCA, the U.S., Mexico, Canada, America lines in effect there. So when it comes to shifting that, if elected to office, what would be your priorities? What would you want to see to do to effectuate that?
Well, we have a big job scarcity here in El Paso. We have the construction business that has no competition. And so unfortunately, a lot of the salaries are kept very low. When you open the markets and you bring competition to any industry, then the ones that win are actually the middle class, which are the ones that are working hard. And what we see here in El Paso is we see a lot of construction, but we don't see more than that. And so the salaries are low, and I experienced it in my own home because my dad was worked in construction, and he had to leave El Paso months at a time, leaving his family, my mom and the 4 kids, and I'm the second oldest, months at a time to be able to go to either California or Midland, Odessa, Dallas, and go and work to be able to provide just a living. I'm not even talking about a good living, just a living for his family. And we want to make sure that at every level there is opportunity and create competition even in that industry so that the salaries can be higher. And now when there's more money in the economy in any certain area, then of course people are going to spend more. So everybody benefits. And again, it's the age-old law of supply and demand. And the more that there is, of course, the price is going to go down, just like we're experiencing right now with the gas prices. And so we want to make sure that if we want to bring the opportunities for the professionals, for those engineers that are graduating from UTEP, we tell our kids, go to college, get a good education so you can provide a good life for your family. And then what happens? They graduate. I mean, they have job fairs of all these companies that are from out of town. What about El Paso? What about those that want to stay? And my sister and her husband, who live in Rio Rancho, they actually left, but they didn't want to leave. They wanted to stay close to family. He graduated with his master's in engineering, and he couldn't find a job. And he had 3 offers: Detroit, Wisconsin, and Albuquerque. And because of our Hispanic heritage, and we always want to be close to each other, he picked Albuquerque. Now their children have grown up in Albuquerque. Of course, they're not going to come back to El Paso, but I remember my sister saying if they would even offer him a job that would pay him half of what they're offering him in Albuquerque, we would stay. And that's one of the main reasons I'm running for Congress. I want to make sure that every industry, every opportunity that our people from El Paso, our children, our grandchildren deserve is brought to El Paso.
So talking about the brain drain there, which has been a perennial issue here, because we've got, a lot of education that happens in our area, and then a lot of people that leave. I mean, the refrain back when I was in high school was "El Paso, get the hell out and never look back," kind of a thing. How do you end up then, at least when it comes to public policy, how do you focus on that and address it?
Well, first of all, we want to make sure that the resources that are here in El Paso, that we actually work with those resources. El Paso is full, not only of just regular resources, but one of our biggest resources is history. We should be a major tourist attraction. We should be the gateway into Latin America. We should be the gateway into Mexico, Latin America, and the world. Demographically, where are we positioned? We are strategically positioned to go anywhere in the world. And why don't we have those industries, whether it's with more government agencies being just situated here? I would love to see the headquarters of Border Patrol be in one of the border cities. And of course, I'm going to advocate for El Paso, but also a lot of our technology. Why is it situated far away from the border? They have to ship everything. We talked about the GDP that is exported from El Paso. But the reality of it is that GDP doesn't come from El Paso. It's not jobs that were created in El Paso that El Pasoans actually created whatever it is that we're selling. It's just the semis are going through our city, using our roadways. And what benefit is that for the people of El Paso? We want to make sure that whatever opportunities are for New York and for DC, they should be in El Paso as well. There's absolutely no reason why our beautiful, historical, wonderfully demographically positioned city should not be winning. I'm tired of El Paso being at the tail. We should be the head and not the tail.
And then another issue that comes along with this, talking about transportation and trade that comes along with it, is, of course, energy prices in very sharp focus right now. So with a lot of focus being on the policies of the current administration and energy exploration, if elected, what would be your focuses there? I mean, it's hard to even forecast what's going to happen necessarily next week, much less months out, the 244 days ahead of the election here. So at this point, what are you looking at? What are your possibilities? What are even your considerations when it comes to energy policy if elected?
Well, definitely Texas, Americans should always come first. This is an atrocity for the American public. What is our median income? We're not even at $45,000 for a household income, and now we're paying more than $4 at the gas pump. I remember in 2008. I had my small business and it operated through memberships. People were canceling memberships left and right because they had to decide whether to have a membership to my business or put food on the table, put gas in the tank to be able to go to work. And now your dollars, your hard-earned money is not going as far as it should be. On election day, November 2020, I want everybody to understand this. Gas was $1.58 a gallon. We are over $4. That is devastating for Americans, but my focus is always El Paso. And of course, I want to just say that our Congresswoman, where is she? Is she condemning the policies of this Biden administration? Absolutely not. Why? Because she has put it in writing that she supports every policy of the Biden administration. This is atrocious for the elderly. I don't even know what percentage of inflation. I didn't check it today, but the last time I checked it, it was like 7.3. But people say, we're at the all-time high compared to since 1982. But if you look at the table of how inflation is measured, inflation has changed for about 12 times. But if we were using the same table that we're using in 1982, we're at over 10%. Right now, today, the barrel of oil is $130. It is projected to go to $250 a barrel. Absolutely unacceptable. Now, the Biden administration has said that they're pumping oil in record numbers. That is a bold-faced lie. Monthly, we are lacking 1.3 million barrels. That translates into the pump for you and for me, the hardworking, the middle class. I'm not talking about the elites. The elites, the rich people in El Paso, they're going to pay whatever they want. And I mean, whatever is out there because they have the resources. And then you have these politicians that are a part of the elite saying, oh, we have your best interest at heart. Why aren't you speaking up against the Biden administration? On day one, he canceled the pipeline being the Keystone pipeline being constructed. Now people say, well, it was going to take years, but that's confidence. When that's being constructed, then people that invest in the market are more willing to do it. Right now, they're not doing it. Why? Because you have an administration that is not friendly, not to energy. It's not a matter of if he's friendly to energy, to oil and gas. He is unfriendly and an enemy of American energy, of American jobs, and that translates that he is an enemy to the working class.
Again, guest right now, Irene Armendariz-Jackson, candidate or nominee, rather, keep taking that mistake after the election here, for the Texas 16th Congressional District, the GOP nominee. Want to find out anything more about her campaign, the issues here, IreneArmendariz-Jackson.com, all one word, all together.
Correct. Or you can do Irene for Congress. It all ends up at the same place.
There you go here. So talking a little bit about some of the issues, some of the introductions here. We got a lot more to come, of course, before this election here. And you got that counter that is more than a little bit jarring to me over on your site. 244 days, 6 hours, and 28 minutes as of right now. So we'll be certainly talking more about this as we get closer to the election here. So thank you very much for coming and talking about some of the major issues and, of course, the overriding ones in our current situation here today.
Correct. And I look forward to when you invite Derek Zubeldia. He is in the business and he knows a lot more, and he's running against Cesar Blanco.
Again, a lot more elections being talked about there. Yes. We'll certainly get to those here. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Due for that next break right now. We'll go ahead and open up those phone lines back up. So if you wanted to call in, 915-544-5876-544 KTSM. Back after this break with more Talk El Paso. You're on News Radio 690 KTSM.
Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
Hello, I'm Erica Castillo with this KFOX 14 News Update. A Texas man has been convicted of storming the U.S. Capitol last year with a holstered handgun. It is a milestone victory for federal prosecutors and the first trial among hundreds of cases arising from last year's riot. A jury also convicted Guy Wesley Reffitt of obstructing Congress's joint session to certify the Electoral College vote on January 6, 2021, of interfering with police officers who were guarding the Capitol, and of threatening his two teenage children if they reported him to law enforcement after the attack. The verdict could be a bellwether for many other Capitol riot cases. It could give Justice Department prosecutors more leverage in plea negotiations and discourage other defendants from gambling on trials of their own. And President Biden is in Fort Worth today. The trip is a chance for the president to talk with veterans and their caregivers and push for more help for members of the military who face health problems after exposure to burn pits, especially in Iraq and Afghanistan. I'm Erica Castillo with this KFOX 14 News Update.
News Radio 690. Traffic all day.
I-10 eastbound at Mesa Street, an accident reported there. I-10 westbound at Executive Center Boulevard. An oversized vehicle is blocking the right lane. Stay left there. Stop and go traffic there on the I-10 eastbound, but it's not as bad as it was a half hour ago. 5-minute delays now. East Lake back to Zaragoza. And a crash reported Rich Beam Boulevard. That's slowing traffic northbound on Rich Beam at Montana Avenue. Carrie Edwards, El Paso traffic.
After another cool day across the area, temperatures will gradually warm over the next couple of days with windy conditions as our next storm system approaches from the west. Tonight, expect another cold night with clear skies and temperatures cooling into the upper 20s to lower 30s. Coming up tonight, we'll talk about when those gusty winds return, plus when we could see colder air moving in, along with the chance for a few showers. From the KFOX 14 Severe Weather Center, I'm meteorologist Kira Miner.
This report is sponsored by Staples Stores. Staples has all the innovative tech and tools you need to take on the future of work, all at great prices. Right now, Apple AirPods Pro are only $199, a $50 savings. Offer ends 3/12 while supplies last, limit 2. Explore what's new at Staples, the working and learning store.
If you are covered by Medicare and Medicaid, then El Paso Health Plus Medicare Advantage Plan offers great supplemental benefits designed specifically for El Pasoans, such as $3,500 a year in dental benefits, $300 in vision, and a quarterly OTC card with $250 to spend on health and wellness products. Plus, generous benefits for hearing, podiatry, home-delivered meals, and so much more. Plus, our new Get Fit benefit to keep you active and social, as well as our new Healthy Eats program. At El Paso Health Plus, we go the extra mile for our members because this is our home and our local knowledgeable staff is here to help you get more benefits, more services, more from your health plan. If you are covered by Medicare and Medicaid, call us 833-742-3125 or visit ephmedicare.com. El Paso Health Plus, your local Medicare Advantage plan.
Hey guys, it's Edge Martinez. My family's gathering in the kitchen. It's our favorite place to catch up. Keep germs out. I use Lysol on countertops, tables, and the fridge handle. Nothing kills more viruses on more surfaces than Lysol disinfectant spray. Lysol, what it takes to protect. Use as directed.
Do you need new blinds or shades? Blindster.com offers custom-made blind shades and shutters shipped directly to you at prices less than big box retailers. Blindster blinds are easy to install and guaranteed to fit. Don't overpay for new blinds. Shop Blindster today and save big. Blindster.com. This report is sponsored by Blindster.
Always just minutes away from the latest news around town and around the world.
It's important to know what's going on, especially around the world.
News Radio 690 KTSM.
News Radio 690 KTSM El Paso.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Have quite the jam-packed show we've got going on for you here today. Again, thank you to our guests and everyone chiming in here. A lot going on, a lot of comments. One of the more busy days we've had lately. And we'll keep talking about it here, the things that affect us here in the Borderland. So again, thanks to Robby Gray from last hour with El Paso Inc. But then also, of course, Irene Armendariz-Jackson, GOP nominee for the Texas 16th Congressional District. We're talking about her campaign. Certainly a lot more to come on that as we are in the wind-up now for the November election for that race. But as she also did make mention there are other races coming up, including runoffs in the meantime, that constitutional election. We're not going to run out of things to talk about, guys. If anyone was concerned about that, even if it wasn't for global events, geez. Anyway, a lot of comments coming in here. Calvin Williams asking, need to invite every guest to this Facebook page. The Skeptic Squad is giving them an open invitation to join us here and meet real people from and in El Paso. Hey, I make mention of it, and we sometimes bring up some of the questions. We're not really set up to be live questioning of candidates. Maybe at some point in the future. We've done events in the past, pre-pandemic anyway. And so there might be a potential, but nothing concrete planned right now to have that be an opportunity. But I've always got stuff in mind here, so I take the point very well. Marlon Espinosa asking, don't know if you asked this, but what is the job description of a congressman? What will she do? We're really referring to Irene Armendariz-Jackson. That is not getting done right now. I think she talked a little bit. I mean, we got to just a couple of major points there. When it comes to jobs, economic policy, and energy policy, disagreeing with the current elected representation. And, I mean, policies, platforms, those things matter. And that's why we get into them here. Again, fully encourage everyone that has an interest and could be voting in these races which should be most of you, to go and be familiar with the issues and the way they're being put forth here. Because, again, one of the points that's come up about ideology versus reality is a very important one, I think, going forward here. Because if you're standing on ceremony and just saying, yes, this is how it should work, and therefore it will, and not looking at how the rubber hits the road, we're going to have a bad time here. So not put fair point on it. A lot of other comments coming in as well. Andrew Ziggernot, unhappy with Senator Ted Cruz, among other things, and a lot more conversations going on there. It's an interesting time there. One of the conversations being made here, Lorenzo Colon saying that Irene Armendariz-Jackson did address there about the Keystone Pipeline, not possible for it to be opened. It was a project going on that had its own issues with particularly indigenous peoples up there, but that the contractor who was building it is not particularly interested anymore. So it's not a open it or close it anymore. It's a restart the whole concept of the project kind of situation we'd be in here right now, which is, I mean, sure, hindsight 2020, and the snake that you just walked past is the one that bit you on the butt. But looking forward and what could actually be put into place is the more interesting point for me here. But let's get to those phone calls on the line here. Again, the number to call if you wanted to squeeze in before the end of the show, 915-544-5876, 544 KTSM. Do have Andrew on the west side here with us right now. Andrew, thanks for joining us.
Yes, good afternoon, and thank you.
Afternoon there. What's on your mind?
One of the other key issues that I see that is not being addressed by our representative here in the 16th Congressional District is border security.
Oh, yeah, that would be, before last week, that would have been the next question we asked, but, well, yeah, we're in the situation we are now. So that's very much, I mean, that's one of the top issues over on Irene Armendariz-Jackson's site there. So that is certainly a topic that comes up here, but yeah, it's amazing how issues get realigned in the face of current events. But what was the point you were wanting to make about it?
Well, it seems like our current representative just follows the policies without question of the Biden administration. We've got a border that is literally open to people all over the world, unfettered access, and it's overloading the system here in the country, especially healthcare providers and social organizations, if you want to call it that.
I mean, we've seen, the amount of time, energy, staffing, all of it that is expended, even just within our dedicated listening area here, has been extensive. I've long said that El Paso is the capital of the border, and that has only borne out with the amount of issues we've been seeing here, with the amount of response, with the things being formulated here and then exported to even just other parts of the border when it comes to the official response has been fairly significant. And I see that continuing on, even if it does, weird enough to say, feel like it's kind of getting backburnered in all of this. It shouldn't be, but I guess there's only so much attention going to be held here. But we'll continue to focus on it here on this program. Have no worry.
Yes, sir, and it's only going to get worse with the situation in the Ukraine. Now, what Miss Armendariz-Jackson did say, yes, I agree with her. I remember Election Day, gas prices were $1.56, even less if you went to Costco. But hey, people wanted to get rid of Trump. They thought he was such a bad, evil person. But hey, I could fill my truck with less than $40 worth of gas. This morning, I paid close to $100 to fill my tank. Now, another thing. If Trump was, and here I go with Trump. Okay, I'm sorry to do this on your program, but they called him. Several people called him gosh, I've lost my train of thought. They saw that he was friendly toward Russia and this, that, and the other. I don't see people saying that about our president to the south. What is his name? Andres Manuel
López Obrador, AMLO.
He's not
yes.
wanting to put any type of sanction against Russia. So you guys take it for what it's worth. You guys got what you voted for.
I mean, elections certainly have impacts here, and I think there's a certain amount of, hindsight wargaming practically at this point that comes from, I think it stems primarily from the idea of the uncertainty of response coming out of a Trump administration versus the very formula. I mean, you could have forecasted most of the steps having been taken by the Biden administration, and like having pre-written it down. If you had said, okay, this is the concrete scenario, Russia has invaded, what is the Biden administration going to do? You probably could have written down most of this had you thought it about enough. And here, that's probably the calculation coming out of the entire Putin administration here, is that we know exactly what it is. We are willing to take reasonable gambles on it. Whereas during a Trump administration, I think the wild card factor is the most persuasive one to me as a why they may not or not have done or expected things to have happened, because I think that's expecting a response would have been a mistake.
Yes. I believe the word was the phrase that Nancy Pelosi used. She said that Trump was a Russian asset. Well, is the president of Mexico a Russian asset for not putting economic sanctions against Russia? Well, you guys judge for yourselves out there, and you all have a good day.
No, sure thing. Thank you for the point in the call there. I mean, there's a whole lot more to get into this, and it just keeps changing by the daily, and we'll keep talking about here. So thank you for the point in the call. Let's squeeze in another call here before we end up hitting this next break here. We have Ben on the east side here with us right now. Ben, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, Andrew, I'd like to get out of the weird, and I want to get into the reality.
Okay.
I've been talking with a lot of my friends here in El Paso, and, you know, some of them live in Socorro, and they work on the west side. Some of them live on the east side. They have to go to Las Cruces, and they're starting to wonder, how am I going to feed my family? We're talking about lower middle class people that are just hardworking individuals that didn't have a job, and now they're trying to figure out how they're going to feed their family. And you know, I've noticed that on the street as I'm walking my dogs, there seems to be a lot more strays out on, and I think that's going to be a lot more of those, because people are going to have to decide whether or not they're going to feed their dogs, or they're going to feed them their family. And you know, this hurts these people.
Oh yeah.
And Biden is sitting there, you know, talking about, you know, buying electric cars. Buttigieg, Kamala Harris, all these people, you know, kind of poo-pooing it. You know, just don't buy as much and everything. Well, how about just not being able to buy food? And that's what they're looking at right now. And eventually they may not be able to buy food because of the cost of food going up so much. And you know, they have to have a job, and so, you know, they got to put gasoline in their cars. And what do these people do? That's something that Biden is not listening to. None of these people, none of these elites, and all of these elites are, if you look at it, are, you know, going right along with the Great Reset proposition. This is what they want to do. They're going to make sure that everybody at the end of everything will own nothing and will be completely dependent on the elite of government.
I mean, yeah, we've talked a bit about here, and I understand your position on the whole Great Reset, but again, we've also been talking a bit about how we have reality impacting ideology in a way that we haven't really seen within decades, at the very least. I mean, I'm sure there are very concrete ways, individual circumstances, that people who are getting hurt directly by this. I mean, I use weird maybe a little bit flippantly sometimes, but it's important to remember that there are very real people being impacted at every level of this, absolutely here. And for those that can, makes me wonder how it's going to work with the whole return to working from home, or if that's going to be maybe extended out there, as having to pay for gas to commute will then make it significantly more expensive for those in that kind of position. But of course, that's not all positions. Those that require, physical labor in a location to be done to accomplish their job, obviously not available to them. And that's a significant portion of our employment base here in the region. So I think that's enough. Okay, there's two factors I look at when it comes down to this, that it's not always a recession that causes a sudden rise in gas prices, but it's almost always been a sudden rise in gas prices and energy costs in general that has been the triggering of things for a recession. And then also food insecurity, specifically if you really want to get into down to that point. We've got some comments that have come up here about it, that there are absolutely going to be more people being ticked off and maybe taking, well, just to put it mildly, alternate means of recourse when it comes to that. That instability of all shapes and sizes can become along and red with that here. All right, we got to take that next break right now. I think at the point in the call here, we're going to close out the show, coming up with a few more calls, sir. So if you're on the line, stay there. Otherwise, stay tuned. More Talk El Paso after this break here on News Radio 690 KTSM.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
If you're on the 10 eastbound headed to the Low Valley, you've got a little bit of a wait. I-10 eastbound between Zaragoza all the way out to Eastlake. It's about a 7-minute delay. I-10 westbound at Executive Center Boulevard. Look for an oversized vehicle blocking the exit ramp downtown Oregon Street at Wyoming Avenue. An injury accident with EMS crew on the scene. Carrie Edwards, El Paso traffic.
This report is sponsored by Sylvania. On dark, foggy roads, do your fog lights provide the visibility you need? Upgrade to LEDs from Sylvania, the leader in automotive lighting. Experience how advanced optical design leads to superior down-road clarity. Visit the Sylvania website to find your LED bulbs today.
New to Curiosity Stream. There's no better feeling than have them hand you a check for $250,000 and thank you for ripping them off. Why did they do it? And how can you avoid their scams? Go inside the mind of a con artist. And the Ark of the Covenant, was it truly a divine power? And why did it kill some who touched it? Unravel the truth behind this biblical mystery on Ark of the Covenant Revealed. It's all on Curiosity Stream. Annual plans are $20, just $1.67 a month. Visit curiositystream.com.
Promise to love, honor, and cherish, forsaking all others?
I do.
I do. And now, by the power vested in me, I now pronounce you roommates. Go forth.
That's not the vow you took. But if struggles with CPAP have you and your spouse sleeping in separate rooms, it might be time to look into Inspire. Inspire works inside the body with just the click of a remote. That's right, just a button. No mask, no hose, just sleep. Inspire. Sleep apnea innovation.
Talk to your doctor to see if Inspire is right for you. Review important safety information at inspiresleep.com.
This is important news. If you have unfiled tax returns, the IRS is shifting gears and ramping up investigations on non-filers this year. If you fail to file your tax returns for a year or more, or you owe back taxes, now's the time to call Optima Tax Relief before the IRS finds you. Optima is America's #1 most trusted tax resolution firm, specialized in helping individuals, families, and businesses get right with the IRS. They're experts in the Taxpayer Relief Initiative, a powerful new program that can make resolving tax issues easier. A+ rated with the Better Business Bureau, Optima's award-winning team has helped thousands of people protect their paychecks, bank accounts, homes, and businesses by putting their tax problems to rest, resolving over $1 billion in tax debts for their clients. Call Optima now for a free consultation.
Call 800-587-6643. 800-587-6643. 800-587-6643.
Optima Tax Relief. Some restrictions apply. For complete details, please visit OptimaTaxRelief.com.
The most current and comprehensive. Just minutes away at the top and bottom of the hour. And always online at KTSMradio.com. El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, rounding the bend on our last segment of the show here. Going to squeeze in what we can here, but don't forget, we're doing it again tomorrow, 4 to 6 p.m., as we do here on News Radio 690 KTSM, talking about the issues affecting us here in the Borderland, some of the things we're working on for you, more on elections, more on some of those interesting situations coming into, well, who could even be on the ballot in the, well, November election and beyond. So talking with Guadalupe Giner, hoping to run against the county judge, actually, now that I think about it, and what that actually entails. So some of the stuff we're working on for you here. Otherwise, it's the point in the show when we do bring up those pound 250 calls. If you're wanting to make that kind of a note here while we're off air, leave us a message. You can do so by dialing pound 250, saying the keyword Talk El Paso when prompted, leaving your own message, much like this.
This is Messiah Frankie. Andrew, I got to tell you, I almost fell off of my bar stool yesterday after hearing your comment, following the comment of that doofus-loving caller you just finished speaking with, right? So you go out and you say that you would prefer a centrist kind of a government. Well, what is this kind of thing? You know, that's never happened in the United States of America. Never been centrist. Maybe slightly center left, slightly center right. But what you got right now is whack job rightism, whack job so far off the right rails, you have to come up with a different term than right. And then you got the opposite side with leftism. So, I mean, lots of luck on that, Andrew. I mean, what was that movie, you know, Shawshank Redemption? And Andrew Dufresne says, hey, hope, Red. It's a wonderful thing. You got to hope there, Andrew. That's what I'm going to tell you. Keep up that hope.
Okay, I am going to be on record as not opting for centrist because I actually hate the phrase centrism. It implies this whole kumbaya, can't we all just get along? Let's find the middle ground and all be happy kind of thing. And no, what I was talking about was that we need reality put into it, what actually works, because we've had a couple of decades, literally 2001, since we went into that conflict with almost no real, this outside of defense budgets, appreciable impact, and of course those service members who have been a part of it and their families, but to the general public, the general populace, there's a whole lot of non-event. You wouldn't know if you weren't looking at the news that something was happening in a technical war. We've lived that way for decades now, and now we're looking at serious conflict on a scale not seen in generations, quite potentially. So we're not looking at the reality of policies and how they're actually going to work, as opposed to, well, I like this set of ideas, so that's what we should implement, and I'm sure it'll work out. That I don't see working much at all. So no, not centrist, reality. All right, we're going to squeeze in one more quick call here. We do have Nate on the east side here with us. Nate, thanks for joining us.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Andrew, and thanks for that Paso audience. What a great day, and God bless you. Just something I passed with like that today. I met a parent that has two sons that are Marines, and this parent that I talked to for a few minutes, there was just basically terrified in lieu of that they may be sent into war. And I just had to remind her, and I had an opportunity like that to talk to her and share with her. You know, we sometimes we encourage these youth to be in the military for the wrong reasons. I know this is America, God bless it, but we have to educate our youth on what our country is about and what being a soldier, airman, sailor, or Marine, or whichever can be. It's not just to draw a paycheck. You draw to serve your nation, and that means in both peacetime and combat. So I just want to encourage, I wish that there was an organization like a group of veterans that could organize something and say, let's talk to people who want to join the military, you know, with some framework there. But I just wanted to say that joining the military is an obligation because it's a duty to our country. And we swear on the oath what we will do or not do. You know, I mean, what we will do. God bless you, and thank you for your time, Andrew.
No, thank you for that point there. I think it's important to remember in this time of certain uncertainty and talk about military options that it's real men and women are people in this community that are going to be directly impacted by it and should never, ever be forgotten. As much as there is a duty for people to serve their country, it is also a duty for the people of the country, and particularly those elected officials, to recognize and understand and truly encapsulate the meaning of what that service is here. We're going to have to leave it here for today because we are out of time here for this program. I want to thank everyone who did tune in, call in, comment, participate in the show. We got a lot more to talk about, and we'll keep doing it 4 to 6 p.m. Monday through Friday right here on News Radio 690 KTSM. I've been your host, Andrew J. Polk. Stay safe out there. Look twice for motorcycles when out on the road, and have a great evening, y'all. We'll see you tomorrow.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
If you're on the 10 eastbound headed to the Low Valley, you've got a little bit of a wait. I-10 eastbound between Zaragoza all the way out to East Lake. It's about a 7-minute delay. I-10 westbound at Executive Center Boulevard. Look for an oversized vehicle blocking the exit ramp downtown Oregon Street at Wyoming Avenue. An injury accident with EMS crew on the scene. Carrie Edwards, El Paso traffic.
The job market is competitive right now, so you need to be competitive to attract top talent. If you're trying to fill open positions at your business, iHeartMedia is here to help. Use radio and digital targeting to find fresh, passive candidates currently in the workforce. These candidates are listening right now, looking for new opportunities. Together, we can let the community know you're hiring. Visit iHeartAdvertising.com. That's iHeartAdvertising.com.
Hey Texas, this is Eric Burton. And I'm Adrian Casala, and we are Black Pumas. We've partnered with Don't Mess with Texas to turn up the